Hello, everyone, and welcome to July's edition of Power Hug. My name is Scott Dwyer. I am a solution engineer, an AI business solutions engineer, in fact, as of a couple of weeks ago here at Microsoft. We, along with my colleague Randall, run this community for healthcare and life sciences Power Platform users, admins, makers, developers. And it's a community for these folks, by these folks. So our goal is to bring customer stories here. We've got a great one for you today. We do have a forum, if you will, on LinkedIn. If you haven't found that group yet, I encourage you to use the QR code there or the ak.ms links. We convene about the fourth Thursday of every month with a couple of exceptions for holidays and things like that. And the goal here is to bring you an hour or so of governance, best practices, user adoption, case studies, customer stories, all sorts of things that can help you on your Power Platform journey. We know this can be a big transformation for a lot of customers, and we'd like to try to bring this forward as just a free resource for you all to use. You'll find previous sessions on our YouTube channel at Power Platform Hub. If you'd like to check out what we've done in the past or listen at an increased speed or whatever your on-demand needs are. And we also have a link there for you to provide us some feedback. So if you have ideas on topics or anything of that nature, we welcome it. And if you're ever interested in presenting, we would love for you to get in touch with Randall or myself or your Microsoft account team. They all know to come to us and get you connected in here. And we look forward to hearing from you. We always start these out talking about a couple of upcoming events. So I'll hand it to my colleague Randall quickly, and we'll get going.
Great, thanks, Scott. All right, so a little bit light here, but we have another event next month. Topic is to be determined. We have someone kind of dangling on the line. We're hoping to confirm in the next week or so, but I will give a hint that they were past presenters, and we're hoping to bring them back one last time here to bring a full circle to their story. But then we also have Power Platform Conference happening in just a few months. I can't believe October is not that far away already. But a couple of things to note there. We have last month's presenters having a session there. They're going to be highlighted by, I think, a product team. Takeda is going to be presenting there about agentic automation and mastering the automation landscape. So a little bit of a tag on to what they talked about last month. And then also we have a couple HLS roundtables happening this year. So last year we had, I think, just one roundtable. This year we're going to have multiple sessions, and then those are going to be led by Liz Vilchis, who's now an owner or co-owner or a sponsor of PowerHug, as well as Lacey Pike. So they'll be leading those, and you can count on we're going to try to have something planned for those events while we're there in Las Vegas. Both Scott and I will be there, so we're hoping to connect with as many of you as possible while we're there. And then Ignite is in November, so we're already talking about November, planning ahead. A lot of great things happening at Ignite. Hopefully, maybe we get some customers talking or presenting at that conference as well. And with that, Scott, you want to go to the next slide? Yeah, so today I'm pretty excited about this one. If you're doing something manual, let's change that, right? That's what we want to do is automate it. So Chris, Rees, and Dwight Scull, they're going to talk to us about what they're doing at CVS Digital, Aetna Health, about change approvals in minutes and not days. So how can we speed up that release management process for you all using Power Platform? So with that, I'm going to hand that off to Dwight Scull. Take it away, Dwight.
All right, thank you, Randall. Let me get a screen share going, and you guys see it? Perfect. All right, well, thank you guys very much for having us. So we're really excited about this topic. We've been able to kind of, in a nutshell, kind of give you a quick preview. Like, we've been able to totally change how we work, and feels like we change it every 6 months now. And so we're going to kind of give you our story about how we went from release automation taking 5 days, sometimes longer, to literally being able to go out in some cases end to end, including validation and production, ready code in about 8 minutes. So without further ado, who are we? Really quick, my name is Dwight Scull. I'm a senior release manager at CVS Health / Aetna Digital.
Yeah, and I'm the other half of the team, Christopher Rees, and I go by Christopher.
Yep, and then really quick little legal thing that our company wants us to say. Anything that we talk about today is our own opinions and don't represent, the company as a whole. So, all right, now we got that out of the way. Christopher, what are we talking about today?
Yeah, so just get into the content of the presentation, defining the problem that faces a lot of enterprises, and for us specifically in the context of this presentation, how Power Platform became a solution to those problems and what that impact has been to our teams, and really just defining how do you get started if you're also interested in leveraging Power Platform for fixing a lot of your business problems. So going from there, let's start defining the problem. What we found, at least where we started here, and I think in many different enterprises that we worked at in the past as well, is you often have fragmented processes, right? So you're in different ticketing tools, you're in different databases, you're maybe in different tools for executing your releases or deployments, and you're having to come up with some manual way to sort of link these things together. Approvals often are taken the form of like email. They're trying to ping people to be like, hey, do you approve this? And maybe they get back to you, maybe they don't. And then you're trying to screenshot things. And it's just, it doesn't work very well, right? And it takes, I know we had one team that took sometimes 3 to 5 days just to get through that process for a simple, microservice release, for example. So with that in mind, the other aspect of that, as we get into really 2025 and how a lot of teams are looking at things, is how do we gather metrics? And when you're in that fragmented process, it's really difficult to get any really accurate metrics, for one thing, and being able to pull that in a way that doesn't take like 10 hours to compile a list from all these different tools that you're pulling from. So how do we really solve those problems? I'll hand it back over to Dwight to really go over how Power Platform became a solution for us.
Yeah, so in a lot of ways, it was really frustrating to see a release that would take maybe 15 minutes in real time to get out the door, take 5 to 6 days to get out for the paperwork. And so one of the things we really just wanted to do was get out of the habit of copying and pasting between different tools. And so we looked at Power Automate and SharePoint as a solution. And so we were able to then leverage a lot of the automation approvals inside of Power Automate to capture who's actually approving everything, capture all the notes that we needed to have all of that. And then we were able to move all that into a SharePoint consolidated list, which was fantastic. And then once we had that in a list, we could actually create one button audit. Basically, we just have a flow right now in Power Automate. We just provide the start of the audit and the end of the audit, click a button, and in a handful of minutes, we already have a CSV file. You can make it into anything you want, really, PDF or whatever you need. But we just use a CSV file for now. And basically now we have an audit report. So instead of having to spend a week or two trying to compile everything together for the audit team, we can do it in minutes, which has been fantastically amazing. Once we realized we could do all of that, we then started building in metrics for DORA, like when did people approve, how long did it take to do the approvals, and started leveraging calculated fields inside of SharePoint lists, and then feeding all of that data into Power BI, which was game changing. I'll talk about that here in a couple seconds as well in a more in-depth way. And then we got tired as we kept going this. We kind of just iterated and iterated. And so, we would have to then manually send out a meeting request for the people doing the job and for us to remember to, kick everything off. And so we just automated that in Power Automate, just added it into our flows. And then people wanted a release calendar. And so we just went into SharePoint lists and created a view for a release calendar. On top of that, we're using a Kanban board to track where the approvals are at and all this thing. And then finally, what we ended up doing was integrating all of it into ServiceNow for us. You could integrate it into Jira if that's what you're using to capture any kind of change tickets. And that allowed us to then feed back everything we were doing in an automated fashion and save an immense amount of time with our, with CVS as a whole. And then the Power BI side of the house, the DORA metrics were available on demand. So what I used to have to do is spend about 3 to 4 hours pulling all those together. I don't think they were ever correct. They were multiple CSV files. It was a pain. Now, teams and individual teams can actually just go and filter on their own teams and pull their own DORA metrics for their team, or we can get it from global as a whole. And then Christopher's been working on uptime metrics as well for different features and microservices inside of our organization that, rise up to a level that people care about them. And then he's also done a cool thing where we can find the big 3 impacts per feature, call those out, and then we can start working with those teams to either develop workarounds or better communication or some sort of thing, let them know that, hey, we actually do get impacted by what you're doing. And so that's just like a snapshot of what we've been able to do. And then I also wanted to call out a couple of other wins for automation. I kind of already talked about the audit stuff, but being able to fulfill an audit request in 10 minutes fully, as opposed to 3 weeks, it's been absolutely amazing, because they'd come back and ask for like, hey, we want to see these 50, and I'd have to cut and paste between different things, screenshot a bunch of things, create this mammoth Word document, make sure it was right. And it would just take, I don't even know how many hours of time, 40, 50 hours of time. And now all of that's provided literally within a couple of clicks. So it's absolutely a game changer there. Scalability has been fantastic. I was on PTO for a week. Christopher was was doing the job. One day he got 4 or 5 times the amount of release that we normally get. And he was able to do it no problem because of all the automation we built in. He's still got to, walk his dog. He's still got to go, take some lunch. He's still got to see his spouse in the evening and got dinner. And I can tell you that before we implemented this, even if I was there, there's no way we could have done that many releases by hand. It just was not possible, nor would they've even been approved quickly enough for that to happen. And then issue detection is something we've put in as well. If a team reports an issue on a very specific like Teams channel, we automatically reply back, or rather Power Automate does, with a list of things that are in progress that we're currently working on, things that were recently successful with validator notes, so you can see whether or not, like, did it go well, like, did they see anything? And then also anything that we recently rolled back, because maybe there's some lingering effects from the rollback, and the validator notes are there as well. And then, of course, that was what Christopher and I were doing. There's still a little bit of a gap. So we worked on creating a one-click button that grabs every change that we know about across the entire enterprise into a CSV that you get in about, honestly speaking, it takes about 30 seconds on our end. And even having the ability to do that as a whole has been absolutely game-breaking and just changing for everything that we're doing. So I'm going to pass this back to Christopher to kind of talk about now how we have a workflow for all of this at a high level.
Yeah, thanks, Dwight. So just really at a high level, this is just an example flow of what you can do when you need an approval flow. So for example, you need some sort of trigger for starting the flow. So in this case, we're using a Microsoft form where the user who needs to request a release can go in, populate the information, select the team they work on, so we know who needs to approve their stuff. And then that basically triggers the Power Automate flow to start. From there, I really just want to call out the different things that we connect to. So you can have any number of approvals. For this example flow, we've got 4 total, basically 2 real two real approvals, and then basically 2 other approvals that act as certain gates that capture sort of date timestamps and then kick off other parts of the automation. So really, the other things I want to call out is, what else does this do besides just approvals? Well, as Dwight alluded to, we have to have some sort of record that is what we're doing, right? What work are you doing? What populates those audit reports that he alluded to? So this is where SharePoint comes in, and we take basically all the dynamic data that's populated into that intake form. We populate our SharePoint record with that. We also connect to other things like Microsoft Planner, and this acts as a nice tracker for basically a Kanban board view of where in the process is my release. And the beautiful thing with Power Automate is you can iterate that along the different phases of the flow, where it's just, again, completely automated, where it moves it to the different phases, and you can go in self-service if you're one of the teams that requested something and be like, hey, where's my stuff, and be able to see it just like that. Some of the other things we're connected to, of course, is the approvals go to Teams and Outlook. So if you're an approver for something, you'll get a notification and an email to approve. And then the other thing is, once something is approved, we can automatically send Outlook meeting requests to act as that sort of calendar reminder of, hey, you've got something going on at 9 p.m. or something. So that's all automated. Just to close out then, being in a large enterprise, we of course have change ticketing. So we can connect to things like ServiceNow or Jira or any number of systems to be able to automatically take that same dynamic data we're populating our records with and update the changes, the change tickets with that data as well. And again, down to the second, we can have those start and end times populated by the automation as well, and it's capturing all that. And then just to close out the flow, was the change successful? Did we actually execute everything? The checkout went well, and we're good to close out. We have that approval as well. So if you approve, we close that out and say, yes, we're successful. We have the note from the people who validate, and that, again, the automation brings that into our record and populates that. If no, and we roll back, then we reject it and we capture that as well. And again, we're capturing all those date timestamps as well. And this is fully automated. So this is just an example of a flow. You can tailor it to however you need, but I'll turn it back over to Dwight, and he's going to start going through basically an example of our intake as well as an actual Power Automate flow.
Yeah, and so with Power Automate, if you're not familiar, you need a trigger and then you have actions after the fact. And so many of our flows are triggered by forms, but we also have some that are triggered by, there's going to be one that's going to run tomorrow or today at 1 p.m. and send an email out to hundreds of people about what's happening this weekend. There's another one that we do to do some cleanup every night. And there's others that we do for approvals that we're just waiting for something to change inside of a ServiceNow list, and then it kicks everything off. So there's a ton of different things that you can do for triggers, but for software intake, because of how our environment works, it makes the most sense to have a quick little form for them to fill out at this point. And so they're just going to give us a title, their team name, which actually hooks up all of the approvals. And Chris will talk about that in a little bit. And then kind of grab basically what they're doing with their stories, who's validating, so we know we have an actual person we can contact, and then like the date and the time that they want to go out. Now I want to show you the same flow that Christopher showed you, but actually in Power Automate. Now, this is just a sample flow. Everything we're showing you today is sample data. It's not real data, but this is a sample flow. Our flows are a lot more complex than this, a lot more approvals and things of that nature, but this is just an idea to get you started. So the very top thing there is that when a new response is submitted, that's the trigger. So when that person submits the form, that's what happens. We grab the information from the form. We have a quick thing where we have a checklist, like a choice, where we just put in the times that they can go in like 15-minute increments for our working hours. And we convert that to a 24-hour clock, basically, is how that works. And then we create a bunch of variables so we can capture the approvals, basically the people who we're going to get approvals from. And then after that, we do a bunch of scopes. A scope, if you're not familiar, is a nice way of quickly, it's like a box or a container. You can shove stuff in it, and it makes this look a little nicer, and you can kind of group stuff together. You got to be careful with scopes, but if you don't do too much with it, it's fine. So the first scope we do is create the audit trail, and then after that, we do a series of approvals. And so Christopher is going to explain the first scope, which is the create audit trail.
Yeah, so just opening that box, this is where we're really just able to group actions that are sort of related to each other into, like Dwight said, into that box. So creating that audit trail, what does that mean for us? So for us, that's talking about SharePoint again. We create that record on our SharePoint list, which is our repository of releases, right? And again, this basically just takes that dynamic data that's populated from that form that gets submitted, and now we get to update SharePoint with a new record and just basically take all that data, and now you're putting it here. This becomes the truth for what are we doing? This is our release record. This is what gets updated through the rest of the flow. From there, Dwight alluded to selecting your team on the approval on the form submission. So when you do that, that maps to another list that we have attached to SharePoint where for each different team, you have your list of approvers. This is where we're able to get that list and populate those variables that he mentioned for the approvals later on in the flow. What you don't see pictured here is you can also connect, like I alluded to earlier, Planner, for example, if you want to set up a Kanban board view, where we create a card on that Kanban, set it in the proper bucket, and then again, later on in the flow, we can iterate it through the different phases of the Kanban. So this is just an example of what you can do. This is basically how we start out with that record, and then we'll go from there. So Dwight, you want to show us an approval example?
Yeah, so this gets a little bit more complex, and it gets more complex if you're adding things like Outlook or Planner or things of that nature. But this is just a kind of high-level example. So in this scope, we're grabbing the first approval. We kind of repeat this step over and over and over again. So the first step there is apply to each loop to get the approval emails. Basically, we are setting up a variable, and we're querying the output of a specific field inside of another SharePoint list. In this case, it would be your first approval field, if that's what you call it. And then from there, we're going to start and wait for an approval. We're going to do a first to approve. That allows people to be on vacation, that sort of thing. And because we do the first to approve, we have this conditional, the outcome does not contain reject. The reason we do that is because if two people click, one person clicks reject and one person clicks approve within about the same like 30-second window, we would want to reject the release and not approve it, no matter in what order that came in. And so that allows us to kind of capture people saying yes and no at the same time, as long as they do it quick enough. Let's just assume happy path. We're going to create a message in the chat channel, in our Teams message. You could do this in Slack or other things. It's just a hook, right? And the advantage of that then is that everybody can kind of see what's going on. And then when it gets time to do the release, as we'll talk about a little bit later, since we're kind of agnostic on what tools we use, Christopher and I can say, hey, this is now done, or this is happening, or that sort of thing. And then people can respond back with, yeah, I'm validating it, or I'm seeing that we need to have a rollback. That sort of conversation can now happen in the Teams channel, and everybody can see it. So everything's kind of open and authentic and transparent. And then after that, we convert the response time of the person clicking the approve or the reject button into Eastern Standard Time, and then we use that to update the SharePoint. So we're going to deep dive into this really quick. Christopher's going to show you the approval and the chat.
Yeah, so just taking a look at that approval action within Power Automate, this is how a basic approval looks. There's different types you can select. So for example, this one is, as Dwight alluded to, a first to respond. So for example, if you have a group of 3 approvers in that first approval, it's only needs one of them to approve to advance to the next stage, or reject if you're on that path. But there's other ways that you can set this up. If everyone needs to approve in that group, then it will wait for everyone, all 3 of them, to approve. It's whatever your needs may be, you can tailor it to that. And really, this is just designed to give them the information of what they're approving. So for example, the title, we can put the release title that we're pulling from that form submission into there. And then for the details, we're basically able to populate with here's where we're going, here's what we're doing, here's the job, here's who's doing it, and really any information you want to provide the approvers that are pertinent to what they need to know to approve or reject something, right? You may be wondering, okay, so I see that there's an approval. Where does it actually go? So this is where it's great being built into Microsoft's platform. It automatically connects to both Teams and Outlook, and it sends the approval to both. So if you're in that approver group, you will get both an email and the Teams notification, and you can approve and reject in either tool. It's fantastic. So going on to that, let's go ahead and take a look at the Teams message that Dwight alluded to. This just provides some visibility for anyone who is a stakeholder in what releases are going on, really. So we have a dedicated releases Teams channel in this case. As you can see, it's basically just populating the same dynamic content that you saw in that approval. So like the release title, for example, and then again, every bit of detail of like when we're doing it, what we're doing gets populated in that. And therefore, if you have access to that channel, you can just go in and see what's going on at any time. And that's just fantastic. And again, throughout the flow, we'll update messages to the same, we'll reply to the same message in Teams. So if people approve, that gets added to the Teams chat as a reply. Says, hey, so-and-so approved at this date timestamp. And then as we go into implementing, again, we'll iterate on that with further replies through the automation. So that's just an example of what we're doing with the approvals. I'll go ahead and hand it back over to Dwight, and he's going to talk about our SharePoint.
Yeah, and before I do, I wanted to mention, like, the cool thing about Power Automate that I've really enjoyed is as long as you can get the data into it, you can then use it as a dynamic field. So we're not showing you any of these examples today, but we have a lot of flows that are basically pulling JSON information from other tool sets, and we're parsing those JSONs out, or they come in natively enough that we can actually get the JSON pre-populated and pre-parsed. And we can use those dynamic fields in everything that we do, which has been just a complete game changer and not having to babysit a lot of processes. So that's just kind of the key here. And this is kind of how everything gets really filled out. If you can get the data in here somehow, like the ID for this SharePoint update comes from the creation of the SharePoint item itself, and it's already pre-populated. You don't have to go dig for it. It's already there. And so that's just kind of the what was really helpful for us specifically. So in this, example, we're updating basically the audit record, right? So we're going to update the same item that we created just a couple of minutes ago, and we're going to set up the approval status value as pending. Now, all of these values are created by you when you set up your SharePoint. So if you don't like these, it's fine. You can create them yourself. It's anything you create in your SharePoint list that shows up in here because you're connecting it with the first two lines of the site address and the list name. Now, the first approval for our purposes is really the crux of everything, right? This is the hard part of the audit. Who approved it? When did they approve it? Can you prove that they did it? What kind of screenshots do you have? That sort of stuff. By having this in place and showing the auditors this, it's been absolutely fantastic for them to be like, oh, great, this is all automated. And what you can't read here, but I'll explain it. The first responses approval is just the status. So did they click approve or reject? So it says approve or reject, and then it's by their name. And in parentheses, we have their email. Just in case you have like 15 John Smiths at your organization, you can know it was John Smith 15 or John Smith 3 that approved it, right? And then we take the converted date time of the actual approval itself. So as soon as they click that button, we can get it to the exact second, convert that time to Eastern Standard, and shove it in here. And then if they left any comments, that's that last part, that response comments that you can't read at the end. So if you leave any comments, you can get that as well. We're going to show you what that looks like. And then at the end, you see that PO acceptance date at the very bottom of the screen. That allows us to start building out these metrics. Like we can grab the PO acceptance date, we can grab the validation acceptance date, we can grab the date that we started the release. And then manually, if somebody wants to roll back and they note it in Teams, we can grab that date time as well, figure out the mean time to discover, and then figure out automatically the mean time to resolve the issue. So these little things here just build us a bunch of time without having to do any of the manual work of that. And so just to bring you back, we showed you kind of the loop to get your validation kind of in a little bit, but really specifically, we showed you how the approval looks like for the dynamic, the post the Teams dynamic, and then also the update the item in the dynamic. And what does it look like when you're all done? It looks like this. As an example. So the approval status is set by the validator. So if the validator rejects, in this case, it's going to say release rolled back. If they approve, it's going to say release successful. To sort by date, the release title, the team, the story, and defects are all entered into from the basically the form at the beginning. The ServiceNow is pulled when we create the ServiceNow, and we literally get the JSON back from the ServiceNow. From an HTTP call, and we parse out that change number. And so then we can put the change number in here, and we don't have to put it in manually. In addition, you see the first, second approvals, you see the release approval, and you see a validation approval. You can see who did it. You can see the exact second that I or Christopher clicked on the approval. You can see the comments that we made. More importantly, the comments and the validation really is what makes this all work. So we harp on our validators all the time to leave really good notes, and some of them will leave like a page of notes if something bad happened, or they just really want to, explain what they did. And that has been very helpful for us. If something happens at the same time that we're doing a release and our other team looks at what we did for the release notes, they look at this and go, oh, it's probably not them. And that saved us from getting onto a bunch of calls and saved us other time as well, because we don't have to justify what we did because we left really good notes as opposed to validated. So hopefully that makes sense, or you've seen that too. So this is kind of what it all looks like. There's a lot of other columns on here that I'm not showing you. Like you saw one with the PO acceptance date, and I kind of alluded to others. And then we have calculated fields inside of the list that takes the time differences to get us how many hours it took to release, how many hours it took to resolve an issue, how many hours it took to define the issue. And that all builds us into a Power BI, which I'm going to hand over to Christopher, who's our resident Power BI expert.
Thanks, Dwight. So I just, again, want to iterate, we mentioned this at the beginning, but this is all fake data. This is just demo numbers. These aren't real. Just get that out of the way. So anyway, because we have all those calculated fields within these SharePoint records that are updated automatically throughout the Power Automate flow, we're able to easily build out these sorts of DORA metrics for our releases. So for example, we have this page, which is just a summary page of sort of the big four categories in DORA, and you sort of get just a color coded, almost like traffic lights. How are we looking? So in this case, I can look at a glance, be like, hey, we're in the green for everything. That's fantastic. Or if something's yellow, I can be like, oh, we maybe need to focus a little bit here. And then orange and red, we have some other statuses for as well. And that just follows basically the industry standard definitions for what number should be for DORA metrics. So, for example, Dwight alluded to validation having, if you approve it, we'll mark that release successful as a status. If you reject it, we'll mark it as a rollback. So we're able to easily pull, hey, what's our change failure rate? And that populates this metric. Going to some of those other calculated time fields, for example, going from when did that first approval happen to when did we actually release? We're able to do the lead time for changes. And then of course, calculating how often do we do it per day? If we caused an issue, how long did it take us to recover? Things like that. And we're able to just get that like that automated. We're not manually populating this at all. So that allows us to get an accurate report that any stakeholder, leadership, anyone interested in any of these data points can easily at a glance pull. And the other beautiful thing is because of the capabilities of Power BI, we can do things like calculating versus the previous period. So building out, what's our trending look like? Are we on the right track? Are we maybe going the wrong way on something? We're able to look at that at a glance too. So for example, for this one, I'm able to see, hey, last month we actually had a somewhat high for us change failure rate, and we were in the yellow, but now we're back in the green, right? So that's great. Or maybe our lead time and deploy frequency is going down a little bit, and that's not as good, right? We want to be agile. We want to go really quicker, and that's what automation enables us to do. And I can honestly say, we're on the right path with that. So this is just an example of what having good automated data can get you and buy you with trying to build out metric reporting. So from there, I'm going to turn it back over to Dwight, and he's just going to go over what impact has all this had for us.
Yeah, I will say it's really cool to watch one of these like big green boxes turn yellow, and then you can deep dive into the team that maybe caused that to then work with them to say, hey, what do we need to do to help get you on the right track again, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of cool stuff that happens because of these Power BI reports. So in talking about that, like we talked about a lot of these already, I'm not going to bore you with it too much, but we've been able to increase our efficiency. Almost immediately, we went to about 2.5 times of the release over month over month. And that's kind of been holding steady. Occasionally we hit 3, sometimes almost 4 times what we used to do. And we can easily be at 5+ capacity without really having to add any more than just the 2 of us at this point. Though it would cut into us automating the rest of the the stuff that we're doing. We kind of often joke that our day job is cutting into our automation work right now. So that said, the other cool thing is the rapid issue resolution. I hinted at this at the very beginning. We've been able to, like what used to happen is if we found an issue in production that we couldn't necessarily maybe roll back or it was faster to roll it forward, the paperwork alone would take a couple of hours to do. And that was with everybody ready to go, ready to approve. And it was just such an arduous thing. Now we've been able to do that specifically with certain things like a feature flag toggle. We've been able to have the request come in and do all the approvals and the toggle and the validation all within 8 minutes is our current thing. We've done some other things I want to call out. Like recently we started doing a lot more parallel approvals where it makes sense. We have some flows that have like over 10 parallel approvals that happen. But even just in our normal stuff, we're trying to figure out how can we go faster by making, do we really need this approval before this one? Can we make them parallel? And that's just something you should know you can do. You can parallel out. Well, like I said, 15 is as far as I was daring to go. And I'll be honest, Power Automate does not, it's a little slow when you have that many kind of actions happening at the same time. But it's amazing that it'll do it. Enhanced collaboration, because everything's all in one place. Everything is being driven by the same data. We can communicate out in different ways and people can see it however they need to see it. But the nice thing is it's the same message and we can do it via automation. We don't have to do it by hand. And if somebody asks us a question, we normally just point them to either the planner or the SharePoint calendar view or whatever they need. And that's been fantastic. Deployment flexibility. My tool is very agnostic. We were building a process tool, not a deployment tool, right? We have deployment tools. We have several of them. What we needed was a way to truncate all this paperwork that we're required to do. and get all the approvals and survive an audit, because we are in a highly regulated industry, as I know the rest of you all are as well, since this is the healthcare users group. And so that allowed us to do that. And so I jokingly say that this process can let you paint your house. I just need to know who's painting it, hopefully not me, and who's going to validate the paint color and who's approving the paint colors. So that's helpful. Improve supportability with having everything centralized there, and we've been able to automate like what we've been doing, and then also use automation to pull what other teams have been doing into our environment, which allows us to literally drop that mean time to resolve issues, because we're not spending an hour trying to dig through a bunch of different tools. We can like have one location, see it really quickly, and go, it might be one of these 3 people that impacted this. Let me make a quick phone call or 2, which has been greatly helpful for the entire business. And then the DORA metrics and the uptime metrics that are updated daily. They can be updated a lot more than that if you wanted, but they're updated daily. That allows the teams themselves to go in, filter on a click, see how their team's doing, see how the organization's doing, maybe see how a specific set of features are doing, because they know where the teams are at with it. It's been absolutely amazing to see people take this information and run with it, because they have the information to run it with. And with that, if you're interested in getting started at all and you haven't yet, Christopher, how did we get started?
Well, really simple. Of course, Microsoft has a pretty robust learning platform. So if you're interested in, in this case, we call out specifically Power Automate and Power BI, since those are our 2 biggest uses with Power Platform so far. Definitely looking at more. But for now, these are a great way to get started, just to familiarize yourself with how do these tools work, what are the basic concepts to understand, what are best practices for how to set things up. This fantastic reading on those platforms for learning. And then another example of where we found just really fantastic resources for how to get started. There's a YouTube channel by Reza Durrani, and he's actually I believe a principal program manager within Microsoft, and he does just all kinds of how-to videos ranging from all sorts of different tools on Power Platform. We, of course, zeroed in a lot on the Power Automate aspects of it, but whether it's Power Apps or he's getting into a lot of the AI implementations within Power Platform as well. I've noticed on a lot of his more recent videos, he's just been a fantastic resource for learning how to do different things. We often joke that if Reza doesn't have a video on something, that maybe it's not possible, but that's probably not true. But it's just, it just goes to show how prolific his channel is in terms of the content. And really, we starting out we would come up with ideas of, I wonder if you could do this. And we would go to his channel and be like, oh, Reza's got a video on it. And we would watch that. And it would be just fantastic for learning, like, hey, here's different concepts. Here's maybe a way of doing something you hadn't thought of. Here's maybe you're stuck on some sort of action you're trying to figure out, like, how do I do this? And he's got a video on it. So it's been fantastic. So these are really, if you're interested in exploring Power Platform as a solution for some of these problems that you may also be facing, and you're looking for automation, these are really just some great resources to check out. We can highly recommend those. So with that, that's the end of our presentation. So I'll turn it back over to you, Scott, and just say thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. And I'll just add to that last slide you had. Reza's tip of the iceberg. There's a ton of different community members that do YouTube channels, they do blogs. It makes it a very kind of searchable platform as you're learning. And that inherently is starting to feed Copilot's capability to be an assistant when you're doing Power Automate development. I had one question. And I think I know the answer, but this was your first exposure to Power Automate. Neither of you had a history or a previous.
100% correct. Yeah, and we didn't even know it existed until one of the guys used it for something that he was doing for releases, and his flows were very rudimentary, and we just like started doing it. And that was after years of kind of being promised a developer. Oh, a developer will come and help, and a developer will come in, and just no developer ever came and helped.
Sounds like you guys became the developer.
We became the developers, yeah, like started getting into a bunch of stuff. And so this low code solution has been absolutely game changing for us. Yeah.
Very cool. That I was kind of hoping that was the answer. That's a pretty neat one to because some of the flows you guys demonstrated and showed us have gotten to the point where they're very, very sophisticated. And I love to see that you truly grew from that like citizen developer background, essentially.
Yep.
The question, next steps, like where do you go from where you're at? How are you looking at taking it even further? Any thoughts about agents coming into play, you know, submitting the request via agents or getting status from agents or maybe alerts from Power BI automatically, that type of thing?
Yeah, like what we're into right now, we're trying to get approval for, you know, again, big company, trying to get approval for APIs into GitHub, because we're looking to move to GitHub Actions here shortly. And so looking to see, can we not even have the form anymore? Can we look at a REST API, basically like the trigger being GitHub itself? And once something gets to a certain point, can we then start pulling everything in from Git and then kick everything off that way? Even the approvals that we have to have in Git, can we just use those as the approvals inside of this and capture that way? So like that's one way. Another way is we're looking into Power Apps to try to provide like a single pane of glass for all of the different things that you could do, plus also maybe showcase some of the Power BI reporting as like a dashboard. So you log in and you can kind of quickly see the DORA metrics or quickly see the outage messages. And then potentially, you know, go find what you need to do a release yourself or look at your last 15 releases of your own. So I mean, there's some other things that we're looking into right now that are just kind of that kind of pipe dream stuff. But I wouldn't say the pipe dream. We're getting closer and closer. A lot of it right now is just, can we get the access we need and the APIs that we need at this point to connect?
Okay.
So
could I add something to that as well?
Of course.
Going to your other point, Randall, about like agents, for example. So one of the really big things that I'm interested in is how can we leverage things like that where why do I need to fill out a form? Why do I need to, do I need to fill out something on Power Apps? I would like to see where we get to the point where you just go to, something on Side Teams and, if it's Copilot or something else and just be like, hey, I need a release for XYZ. And, it starts the process, or I'm looking for, hey, what's the status of this? I would love to integrate really some of those AI solutions into what we're doing as well. So I definitely see that as part of the future for us as well.
Yeah, we have been looking into Copilot Studio and other things to try to figure out, like, can we kick things off and then feed the information back into Power Automate to then, kick other things off and try to, what we're trying to do is reduce the friction between you wanting something in the environment to us being able to get it to you, and try to reduce it to the point where it's like, maybe you already have an existing process. Can we piggyback off of that? And once it hits a certain point, we can trigger off of that as well. And then there's other things that we're being asked to do just across the organization as we get, as we're basically like evangelizing this tool out to other groups inside of CVS, like, what manual processes are you guys doing? Okay, can we come alongside you, not own your process, but come alongside you and maybe quickly do an architecture thing of what we would do, given what we know. And then how do we help you like implement that? And we've done that with a handful of teams already. So.
Yeah, and another aspect of that is, we've talked about our side of the process a lot, but, another aspect of that is really just self-service for everyone else who has to enter our process, right? And how do you do things like, hey, I need to update who my approvers are for this team? Well, we currently have some self-service solutions, which is like another form and another flow that does that automatically for us as well. So it updates those approver lists. We have, some other ideas for, like you said, in the future, can we get away from having to fill out forms and things now that we have things like Copilot Studio around? Can we just leverage, a lot of that just to make it easier for folks? So that's definitely something that plays into how we envision a lot of the automation we're building.
That's great. Good thoughts.
You guys, have you seen yourself spawn any other citizen developers over there? Has anybody picked this up and kind of run with it?
There've been a handful of teams that have, like, every once in a while they come back to me and they're like, hey, I'm working on this weird expression. How in the world did you do that? And if I have it, I'll hand it over. If I don't, I'll be like, so Copilot actually, like, we just beat on Copilot chat all day long. Like, here's the expression. It's not quite right. Or like we get it close and then it's like, I'm missing something, and half the time it's like, oh, yeah, that I'm missing that other single quote or something stupid, But So that's been helpful, just getting some of those right. Or a lot of times what we'll do is we'll actually ping it to ask it for architecture questions. Like, I'm trying to do X, Y, and Z. Like, what would you suggest? And at that point, then just gives you like brainstorming ideas to then go, oh, that's something I never thought about. We could incorporate this, then we could do this other thing with it. And so there's some really cool stuff there with the Copilot chat. We actually also got like the researcher enabled on our stuff. And so I actually shoved our entire release back, like our release notes through a CSV, and started just querying our data for things like trending on rollbacks and trending on other things, and like what teams are causing us the most churn, and which teams are slower than others, and start to kind of use that information not as like a stick, but as is there a reason for it? You know, and sometimes there is. It's like, oh yeah, that's a very long process, and of course that's going to take longer. But other times you're like, why is that there?
Very cool.
And there's just no way I could assimilate like 2.5 years of data like in 10 minutes, you know. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, Copilot was honestly really instrumental in helping me like learn Power BI, for example. So understanding things like, hey, here's how you set up your data model properly. Here's how you can build it out to do certain calculations that you might not be able to do, like if you just open it up and just, oh, I pulled in this one thing and I'm just going to get started. And it really was instrumental in helping me figure, those out. So it's nice to just beat on, Copilot and be like, well, I have this idea to do this. And well, have you thought about doing it this way? And being able to, sort of go back and forth and kind of learn in the process, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's just been a fantastic tool for us.
Yeah, it's like my last hour has been spent just chatting with with Copilot,
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, I can relate so much to finding the missing single quote or wrong style of bracket or something like that. Thanks to Copilot.
Your JSON's not formatted correctly. I'm like, here's the JSON. What am I missing? Like, there's a comma that you missed 16 lines up, and you're like, thank you.
Right. You're missing too much. Maybe format it this way. Thanks, Copilot.
I was going cross-eyed looking at the form at the JSON.
Awesome. Randall, any last minute questions, or are you good?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. Well, I'm going to take back the share just for a moment. Always just want to say a big thanks to you both for coming and joining us today. This was a really fun session, and it's you have no idea how much it tickles me to see people that are getting some, not just efficiency, but a little bit of joy out of the Power Platform. It really is a neat tool that we here at Microsoft believe in a ton. Just to add some quality of life. I love the little anecdotes you guys gave about having time for things outside of work. That's Microsoft's mission is to empower every person on the planet to do and achieve more. And sometimes that means getting approvals done a little quicker. But I think to be able to get approvals done a little bit quicker while also freeing yourself up to have a more fulfilling life, that is just a rare Venn diagram that I love that we're checking that box sometimes. We're always here, so please join us on, check this out on YouTube. Join us on the LinkedIn group. We'd love to see some folks. If you stump Copilot, you can't find a YouTube video, feel free to use that forum as a place to post and ask questions. Randall and I have been moderating it. Haven't quite taken off, but we'd love to see people use that. Love to hear your feedback, and hopefully we'll see you on the LinkedIn channel and find us directly on there as well. Like Randall teased, we think we have a speaker lined up for the 28th, so I'll be posting about that on LinkedIn here in the next couple of days, hopefully. And keep in mind that Power Platform Conference, if you have any contacts at Microsoft, or reach out to Randall and I. If you do end up attending or have plans to attend, we would love to connect in person and meet up with you there. It's all too rare of a thing. Thank you both again, and everybody have a nice rest of your week.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.